name is Nick Hughes. I am the one on the right. Our company is Your Planning Partners. We work with business owners to help them build strong and sustainable businesses. And this means much more than just selling more stuff. It means focusing your attention on all facets of your business, and it means you must build a talented and engaged team because you can't do it alone. So that's why we chose this month's webinar topic. It is so important to have engaged people in your team, and Liza is going to show us how we can achieve that. And who is Liza? She's the one on the left. She's a client and colleague. She is founder of Spark HR, an HR firm that focuses on helping businesses become more successful through the performance of aligned, capable, and engaged teams. She brings to her work more than 20 years' experience in the field, and so is a perfect fit to present today's topic. As we work through the webinar today, we will take questions, and if time runs out, Liza will be happy to respond to any outstanding questions if you call her on a one-to-one basis. Her number is, and we will repeat this at the end, 905-267-8592. And as I said, we will share that at the end. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand the control and the morning over to Liza. And Liza, it's all yours.
Thank you, Nick. Good morning, everyone. I am so pleased to be here this morning. Thank you to all of you on the phone for joining us. Your attendance here this morning certainly is an indication of your interest in this very important business topic. Thank you also to Nick and the team at Your Planning Partners for hosting this session. The fact that they have organized a session about employee engagement acknowledges that this is an important part of building a business, and engagement does make a contribution to business success. So our goal this morning is that you'll come away with a deeper understanding of why engagement matters in business, and we also hope that you will have obtained some additional insights into how you might build employee engagement in the business that you have, whether you own a business or perhaps you're a manager or you're an employee in a business. Whatever perspective you're taking, we will talk about some things that you can do to begin to build more engagement in your work experience. So we'd like to start with a quick test, and you may be thinking, oh no, it's too early in the morning for a quick test, but I promise it's quick and I promise that it's easy. So I have a few questions for you, and my question is this. If you're a business owner, I'd like you to consider the team that works for you. If you support a manager or a business owner, consider that team. And if neither of these situations is relevant to you, then think of a workplace that you've been a part of or that you are a part of now. At some point in time in our working lives, we've been a part of the team. So these questions that I'll ask you, consider them on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is an emphatic, absolutely yes, this is the way we do it, without a doubt, and 1 is a never, would not see that in this workplace, just not going to happen. So with that scale in mind, think of these questions. Are you confident that your employees or your colleagues would recommend your company to their friends and family as a good place to work?
10.
I hope there's a lot of 10s out there, Nick. When you hear employees talk about their work, do they use language like us and them, or do they say we? Do employees go through their day showing energy? Do they smile? Do they greet one another? Do you observe employees actively initiating and participating in conversations about customers, products, or how to make it better, how to improve how work gets done? Do employees demonstrate acts of kindness and care towards one another? And are you confident that if you asked your employees or your colleagues what the top 3 goals are for your business, that they could tell you And would they all say the same thing?
Tricky.
So as you think about these questions and your answers to them, what comes to mind? These are anecdotal examples of what engagement looks like at work on a day-to-day basis. And you may see some of these things most of the time, or maybe just once in a while. Keeping your workplace engaged certainly is an evolving and ongoing effort, and we'll recognize that today as we talk about some of the things that you can do. But before we get into how to build employee engagement, I'd like to take a moment and actually define the term engagement and what we're talking about. Sometimes people use the term engagement and satisfaction interchangeably, and I don't really agree that they're the same thing. I mean, being satisfied at work is certainly a positive thing, but being engaged at work, that takes it up a notch. That's another level of energy. And one definition that I particularly like is this one: the extent to which employees are motivated to contribute to organizational success and willing to apply discretionary effort to accomplish tasks important to the organization. And I like this definition because of the fact that it focuses on discretionary effort, that people choose to do more. People do this when they care about what's happening in the workplace. People exert discretionary effort when there is an emotional connection, when there's a commitment to the organization and its goals. It goes deeper than satisfaction, and we know it when we see it. We know it when we work with someone who's engaged. We know it when we're engaged. When the chips are down, engaged employees are there and they go the extra mile. They stand out. So I want to share with you some very interesting information about employee engagement in Canada. In 2012, so not too long ago, an organization, Gallup, I'm sure you've heard of it. They've often been reported in various business periodicals and articles about research that they've done on different aspects of business. And they did a major research project in 2012 on the subject of employee engagement. It was global. They surveyed about 25 million employees from hundreds of companies in 42 different countries around the world. So needless to say, they gathered a lot of information. Last year, in 2013, they published their findings in a report called The State of the Global Workplace. So I reviewed this report, and I have to admit I was quite surprised with the information that I found. Given it was a global report, the first place I looked was at the North American data. And I saw that the engagement rate in the United States is at 30%. So in other words, 30% of employees working in the U.S. are engaged in their work. Now maybe you think this is a mediocre number, but comparatively speaking, with the global level of employee engagement at 13%, the U.S. results look pretty good. So of course, after looking at the U.S. results, I thought, well, I got to find where the Canadian results are. And while there are many differences between the U.S. and Canada, and we're both great countries, I have to say one of the differences is our engagement rate. When you look at Canada, our engagement rate is only 16%. I found that to be a pretty staggering statistic because, of course, the other side of that is that over 80% of people working in Canada are not as engaged. They're not as focused, committed, and then certainly not as productive as they could be. When we look at the information about the proportion of disengaged employees in Canada, we can even break that down a little bit further. We know that of this 84%, 14% are actively disengaged. So what does that mean? Well, this is the group of employees that speaks negatively about employers to their family and friends. they're the folks that might be disruptive, critical to, or critical of the work that is being done in your workplace. This is a difficult bunch to manage, and that actually could be another webinar in and of itself. But I'd like to focus on that other group, the remaining 70%, the group of employees who are simply disengaged. So they're coming to work, they're doing their job, but they're not doing much more. And for whatever reason, that discretionary effort just isn't forthcoming. A question, think about this. What would our workplaces be like if this group was mobilized and motivated to do more, to commit more, to be more involved? What would the impact be? Fortunately, because of the research like the Gallup study and other studies that have been done, we actually do know what the impact could be. In the past, business leaders could debate about whether or not that 16% of engagement really means anything to the bottom line. But today, we actually have research that illustrates that there is a relationship between that 16% and the financial performance of the organizations that do enjoy high levels of employee engagement. So here's the other piece of information that I think is important to share from the Gallup study. Gallup looked at key performance indicators of the high-performing or highly engaged organizations in their study. And they compared these key performance indicators with the organizations who reported low levels of employee engagement. You can see on the screen here that the difference in their performance indicators is substantial. So certainly, all of these indicators, better quality, better safety, reduced absenteeism, reduced turnover, those are things that will either impact the revenue line in a positive way or reduce expenses. So the net result of all of that is 22% higher profits were found in the companies that had high levels of employee engagement. These are quite startling numbers, as you said. And putting these aside, the other side of the engagement is, of course, it's such a much more enjoyable, wonderful place to work in a company where everyone is engaged. So it's also a great benefit to the employees as well. It absolutely is. Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's a great point, Nick, because that benefit to employees has a spillover effect into other parts of an employee's life. So when an employee is actively engaged at work, there's more energy there, and there, as I say, there's that ripple effect into other parts of their lives. There's that opposite scenario too, but certainly, what we're focusing on is how to achieve the positive, and it definitely creates a more fun workplace where people want to be a part of it. Okay, so we talk about what engagement is. We talk about how we're doing in Canada. We talk about why engagement matters. So the next question is, how do we get there? What do we do about it? Well, I'd like to begin answering that question by pointing out that there are 3 things that you will find in engaged workplaces. We call them drivers of engagement. These 3 things are growth, recognition, and trust. So these are aspects of that of engaged workplaces, of organizational culture that you'll consistently find. By growth, we're not just talking about promotions, and a lot of times people will equate growth with promotions. And for smaller businesses, they may say, well, I don't have a lot of levels in my company. I don't have a lot of opportunities to promote people. So how do I create an environment of growth? Well, again, promotions is only one piece of it. It is so much more than that. Growth means that you're creating a culture of learning. Are your employees learning in the jobs that they have today? Are they developing their skills? Do you know what their career interests are, what their strengths are? Are they getting feedback that helps them to do their jobs? So we'll talk a little bit more detail in a moment about HR practices that can help drive a culture of growth. Recognition. Now, recognition includes remuneration, but again, it's a lot more than that. Do employees feel appreciated and valued? How do they know that their contribution matters? And then trust. When we look at trust in a workplace, we see that it exists when employees have confidence in the direction of the company. They believe that their managers, their leaders are competent and taking the company in the right direction, and they also count on their leaders to do the right thing and are confident in the leaders' decisions. So growth, recognition, and trust are three attributes that underpin anything that you do in your HR practices. So on that note, I'd like to talk about some specific HR practices that can help you to develop these three attributes in your workplace. What I'm going to show you on the next screen is an illustration of an HR system. Now, an HR system isn't any different than any other system you might have in your business, a quality system, a financial system, a production system. The same principles are there. It's a series of approaches, actions, processes that work together to get a desired result. An HR system is the same thing. And there may be a million ways to illustrate what an HR system looks like. This is how we at Spark HR think of an HR system. Now, before you get concerned that I'm getting too academic about this, let me assure you I'm not going to go into a lot of theory here. The last thing I want to do is overload you with a lot of information. Instead, I want to highlight practical actions you can take, and I'm hoping that this visual really just helps to pull it all together and create a framework for you to look at those actions. What I would compare it to, if you will, is that when we look at these particular aspects of HR practices, it's a bit like going to a buffet dinner. So right now with this slide, picture that we're standing at the buffet line with an empty plate. And when you look at this visual, you're looking at everything you may possibly want to have. Some things you'll like, some things you won't be interested in. We'll start in the middle. Leadership. Leadership is in the middle of this model for a reason. It's foundational. The work of a leader, the business owner, it either feeds or starves the operation of a business. The HR practices are no exception. What you see on the right is a list of activities that leaders can do that will have an impact on engagement. Now, you may look at that list and you say, well, vision, mission, strategy, those are good business practices. What does that have to do with HR? The answer is quite a lot. The work that you do in this area as a leader, as a business owner, will help to define who you recruit. It will help you to know what skills you need in your team. It will help you to articulate what you expect of people. It will help you set goals for their performance. So that's what I mean when I say this work is foundational. Another item on this list is manager capability. As a leader, as a business owner, what kinds of things are you doing in your business to help your managers be the best they can be? They are the first point of contact for your frontline employees. And the quality of the relationship between an employee and their direct manager has a significant impact on whether or not someone is engaged at work. And as you'll see in the coming slides, the HR practices that we talk about are for the most part carried out directly by managers. So supporting your managers and holding them accountable to manage according to the values and the behaviors that you believe are important is an investment in your company. And it's through your managers that you create the workplace that you want and choose to have. So using our buffet analogy, leadership, I say, is like the protein on your plate. It's what your body needs to have energy, to move, to grow. It's the same comparison for your business.
And also, of course, lies with the leadership. This applies to leadership whether you're running a company with one person on your team or 50 people on your team. All of these things apply very much so, I would suggest.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Nick, and that's a good point as well, insofar as you know, a larger organization may have more extensive or complex processes, and a smaller organization may have some practices that are not as complex. The thing about this kind of system is it doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be customized to what suits the business, whether it's one or whether it's 100.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we'll just take a quick look at some of the other spokes on that wheel.
Plates on the buffet.
On the buffet. So we're walking down the buffet. So we look at one option, finding the right talent. So we're talking here about external and internal processes where you're deciding on who goes in what job. When you bring people into your company, to what extent do you assess how they might contribute to the engagement levels within your workplace? Are you selecting managers that are skilled at building effective teams and who are able to connect and care about and collaborate with the people that they have to work with? When you're looking inside your company, do you consider folks inside for different vacant roles that come up? Or do you always go external? Do you give folks the opportunity to do something new and different? So what process do you have for considering who might be going into a new role internally? Your selection processes, this is a good example of an HR practice that can build growth, recognition, and trust, all three drivers of engagement. And we know that selecting the right people matters, because when you get the right people on the team's got the skills they need to get the job done, and that is motivating. Let's move down the buffet to developing the team. Now we're talking here about HR practices that develop the skills, knowledge, and abilities of your employees. So again, it doesn't have to be promotions, but it can be. But it's also about what you do to support learning. Something as simple as providing feedback on a day-to-day basis helps to develop your team. Now, I've worked with a number of managers who have been excellent at coaching employees and giving feedback, and as a result, their members of their teams have been more engaged in their work. It helps them to know that their manager cares, and it helps them to feel like they are growing. Notwithstanding all of the different examples I've had in working with some really great managers, one example I'd like to share with you is actually from a movie. I don't know if you've ever watched the sports movie Moneyball, but it stars Brad Pitt as the general manager of the Oakland A's professional baseball team, a gentleman by the name of Billy Beane. And while the movie is set in 2002, Billy Beane still continues to manage the Oakland A's today. So for folks who aren't familiar with this movie, it is about the outstanding and historic season that the Oakland A's had in 2002 when they broke a winning streak record. I think it was 20 games, and they made it to the playoffs. Now, what was unique in this situation is that they did so on a very meager budget by baseball standards, and they did so after they had lost some of their key best performing players. So the story is a pretty good case study in leadership vision and managing change and selecting the right players for your team. But I share it here because it's got great examples in the movie of transformational one-on-one coaching conversations and really shows the art of feedback. In the movie, we see that Billy Beane's management style at the beginning of the season is what I would call fairly aloof. He doesn't believe in mixing with the players. As the season progresses, he sees that to get his team on board with his vision, that strategy isn't working for him. So he gets involved. And there are a number of scenes where he and his assistant general manager, Peter Brand, are talking with players in great detail about bunting, stealing, swinging, all in their turf. They are in the locker room, they're in the training room, they're at the batting cages. And you see these really powerful, short conversations where the players become very engaged. It's two-way dialogue. And the team starts to turn and the team starts to perform to achieve a level of performance that they hadn't seen in the history of the franchise. So if you're looking for a movie to watch this weekend and haven't seen that one, I would encourage you to have a look at Moneyball and watch for those kinds of conversations. It's a pretty good example of the power of specific, timely, effective feedback. And that is one way that your managers can succeed in developing the team.
I have a question here from Talk Your Managers from Charles.
Okay.
He says, what if you do not have a team of managers?
If you don't have a team of managers, then I would think, Charles, what that will mean is that you are doing both the leading and the managing. And those are two very different roles, two very different hats that many business owners wear. I work with business owners that at times they have to put their leadership hat on, and at times they have to put their manager hat on. So there's a little bit of overlap, but in a sense, I look at managing like the coordination of work, the monitoring of work, whereas leading is looking more at the longer term of the business and getting folks inspired to follow that direction with you. So if you don't have a team of managers, then you're doing both.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So let's then go to managing work and HR practices that can help you build engagement here. It's no coincidence that highly engaged teams, they're high-performing teams. They're executing on the business plans. They know what they have to do. Their roles are clear. Their managers or their business owners are having one-on-one coaching conversations with them, and again, we see feedback coming up here. So these are practices that, as your team is going through the year, working on their objectives, carrying out the duty of their jobs, these are practices that, as a manager, if you are setting clear goals, measurable goals, relevant goals, and you are working with them towards achieving them, you will see levels of performance and engagement unfold. I managed a team at one point of about 25 people, and I'll share with you one experience I had with that team where I learned how important clear roles are. So I say we had 25 people, and in a meeting one afternoon with 4 people who were doing relatively the same type of work, we were talking about some frustration that they were experiencing in their work. And as we discussed this together, what became clear to me was the source of frustration they were having in their jobs was coming about because they were doing tasks that were, well, really had nothing to do with their jobs. and it was work that was probably it was work that they were doing that actually made more sense to be in another part of the organization. So as we talked about it, we realized that their work and the confusion that they were having over what they were responsible for as compared to another team was causing quite a bit of disruption, frustration, annoyance, and distraction. So we talked about what we thought it should be. We talked about how to change it, knowing that the change impacted other people. And as we talked about it, I knew that they needed my help to change it. So we identified a series of actions that we had to take to make sure they had clear roles. And it took us about 3 months to resolve it, but step by step we got it done. And the next year we did an engagement survey with our team, and with this particular group, well, we improved our engagement results overall, but with this particular group, we had a marked improvement over the prior year, and I'm convinced that the work that we did to make their roles more clear contributed to the increase, the positive engagement results that we had. Okay, so just moving on then to the next item on the buffet line. Yes.
On the turkey now?
No, it's the turkey's protein that's in the middle.
Dessert.
Yeah, we're getting to dessert. This is some veggies here. So we're talking about rewarding work. When we look at rewards, you know, certainly and understandably and correctly, money comes to mind. There's 3 points I would like to emphasize with respect to rewarding work. First, money alone is not going to increase your engagement. It may bring delight in the short term, but it's not by itself going to be the mechanism that will engage the hearts and minds of your team in the long run. Employees today care about the entire deal, the money and everything else. And especially, you know, we talk a lot today about Generation Y employees. And they are a good example of employees that look at the whole package. So that's one point I'd like to emphasize. The money matters, but it matters also in relation to all of the other aspects of your employment offer. The second point is, it's important to get the money right because it's a way of building trust in your leadership. It's a way of recognizing good work. And we talked about trust and recognition as drivers of engagement. I admit there is a careful and important balance between responsible spending of what probably is one of the largest expenses in your profit and loss statement and spending enough money in the right places for employees to trust that they're being fairly compensated and recognized for their contribution. So it's important to get this right. The third point that I would emphasize is that when you think about rewarding work, also consider formal and informal recognition programs. Many companies have formal programs to recognize employee accomplishments, and informal actions matter too. Something as simple and as inexpensive, pardon me, as a thank you note or recognition at a team meeting goes a long way. I like hockey. I have a son who likes hockey. I have a husband who likes hockey. I worked for...
Is that the best family?
We've had a lot of fun with hockey, yeah. I share that with you because I had a manager who knew this about me. And there was one time I worked on a pretty time-sensitive issue that had come up in our team, and it was a lot of work, and I got it done. And I didn't expect anything extra as a result of it, but he said thank you, and he gave me 3 tickets to the Hockey Hall of Fame, which resulted in a really nice afternoon there as a family, and that was courtesy of my boss. and it meant a lot. And it showed me that he cared about what I did, and that he cared about me, because it was certainly a personalized gift. So it's one of those examples that stands out for me, and I encourage you to think about opportunities that you might have to recognize extra efforts of people on your team with something that may be simple and personalized for them. Okay. Moving to the next item on the line, building a healthy workplace. What I highlight here is, we'll call business-wide initiatives that can foster an engaging and productive workplace. Many employees value flexible work arrangements. That's one example that you see on the list. There's some work that lends itself well to flexibility, and admittedly, there's some work that really doesn't. It's, again, like all of these different practices, looking at what's best, what fits for your workplace. The flexible work arrangements are often something that is highly valued by employees, and when you see lists of best employers and what they do, often there are programs that have some aspect of flexibility as part of the employment deal that these best employers offer. Earlier on, I talked about the study that Gallup did on engagement. One thing that they found in the study is that engaged employees lead healthier lives. So, you know, health and wellness programs and different initiatives that may support employees in other aspects of their lives may be something to look at. It might be something that fits for your organization. If you ask the question, how can you as an employer help your employees to thrive, there may be something there to explore. So there's a walk down the buffet line, and I hope now that you have a full plate and that you've had some ideas sparked in your mind about things that you might do. Perhaps you're doing some of these already, and you see that, you know what, I'm on the right track, or perhaps you might see something new that you hadn't thought of before. Certainly, when you're building an HR system, I do want to emphasize that it does take time, and you build it over a period of time. It's an investment. It's something that is continuously improved. It evolves, and it can be simple and should be simple to fit with your workplace. So recognizing that this is something that is built over time, you may ask the question, well, what can I do now? We have some suggestions on things that you can do as soon as this webinar is completed. If you're a business owner, here are a few suggestions on things that you can do today. Ask yourself the question, would I want to work for me?
Ooh, no way. No, I'm not going to ask that
You don't want to work for you, Nick? It's a daring one. Well, if you ask yourself that question, reflect honestly, and if you don't want to work for you, know why not? Ask yourself the question, what do you want your workplace to look like? Describe it, write it down. Compare that to where you are. Think about your strategic plan. How well have you communicated your business goals? We talked a moment ago about recognition. Is there an opportunity to thank someone on your team today? And think about what actions you've taken to support managers, if you do have any managers that work on your team.
So coming back to Charles's question,
yeah.
These 4 points, and I assume the next ones, would apply to someone who does not have the management team in place.
Absolutely, Nick, 100%. So if you are a business owner that doesn't have managers, these apply to you as well. Or you may be employed as a manager and reporting to a business owner. Here's some things you can do. Take stock about your one-on-one connections with each member of your team. Does each member of your team know that you care? Are you making an effort to get to know them? Do you take time to have conversation with them? Or are you so busy and so buried that you really aren't making those connections day to day and feeling rushed? If so, can you slow down? Look at your team's objectives. Do they have objectives? Are their objectives clear? Do they understand what their contribution is to your larger business? Do you know who's really good at what and how to assign work to them so that they can use their strengths on their job? And is there some feedback that you haven't given, one small item, something that you can offer to someone today that may help them in their job? So, yeah.
Actually, this is an interesting list because in our work with business owners and their businesses, of course, all our clients are perfect, and so they do all of these things. But the one thing that we do struggle with a lot when we're working together is the second bullet there, assessing the team's objectives in light of the company objectives.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad you've included that in the list because it is something we keep striving to do, but we should continue to do.
Yeah, when you think about some of the work that you do, Nick, with clients in helping to articulate their vision and their plans,
Mm-hmm.
That type of work feeds right into individual objectives. And this piece is so important for engagement because then somebody understands what their contribution is to the larger success of the business.
Absolutely.
That alignment is very powerful when it occurs.
Yeah, and it's certainly something we've got to keep focused on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you know, the first slide that we had at the beginning of this webinar, one of the questions on the scale of 1 to 10 was to ask people, what are our top 3 goals? Can they answer it accurately?
That's a very brave question to ask.
It is. It is. And if they can't answer it, that's okay. I mean, you know, then the next question is, well, how do we change that so that they can answer it? What do we have to improve in our communication so that they know and understand and buy into where we're going and what we have to accomplish?
Absolutely, yeah. Great.
Okay. Now, you know, I've talked a lot about leaders. I've talked a lot about managers. So you might assume that I put 100% of the responsibility in building an engaging workplace on the shoulders of management. And I would say that you're almost correct in that assumption. I would put I'll call engagement ball in management's court about 80% of the time. But the rest of the time, I do believe that there's responsibility that belongs with each individual employee. That there are things that we can do as employees to foster our own engagement. And so a few suggestions here. When you think about your own work and your personal level of engagement, here are a few things that you can do. Think about, you know, what's it like to work with you? Are you initiating positive interactions with your coworkers? Are you truly giving your best each and every day? Are you taking ownership of your work? Do you know what's expected of you? So yes, business owners are well served in communicating the goals clearly and in setting objectives. But if you're, as an employee, if you are not sure what your goals are, ask, clarify. Look at what you can do to make your work more engaging and more fulfilling for you. And then lastly, you know, think about what you want for your work and what kinds of goals you have for your own career and working life. So to sum it up, we've covered quite a bit this morning in the last 50 minutes. So I'll conclude by summing it up here to say that we looked at the fact that companies that have higher employee engagement do consistently, and I emphasize consistently, report better financial performance than their counterparts and competitors who have low engagement. We talked about the fact that leadership is foundational to building engagement, and that the drivers of engagement are growth, recognition, and trust. We talked about the importance of managers, and again, to Charles's question, if you don't have managers, then you're looking at the relationship with the business owner and the relationship employees have with the business owner, and that has a significant impact. So it's worth it to invest in the development of yourself as a business owner or any managers that you have on your team. We acknowledge that building effective HR practices will support your managers and contribute to the engagement levels in your business. And we concluded by acknowledging that there are simple, inexpensive actions that you can do today. So with that,
I have a question here.
Yes.
What's your opinion of using financial bonuses as a means of rewarding and building engagement?
I think there's a few points here that are coming to mind, Nick. First, I think depending on how the program is designed, and the design of bonus programs is critical, they give us the opportunities to, one, increase alignment. So there's messages in bonus programs about what the company values and where the company wants employees to spend their time and focus their efforts. What are they getting rewarded on? There's sometimes such bonuses are rewarded based on team or individual results or a combination of both. So there's an important philosophical point there. But on the whole, I do believe that they can make a contribution to engagement, because if they're designed properly, they can support alignment to objectives. They can give recognition for work well done. It's one of those things where I think the devil's in the details. But they can do it, and as long as there's other things too. Again, not by itself.
Okay, good point. Yeah.
There was one business owner I had a conversation with some time ago, and he said, I want to develop a profit-sharing program because I want to increase engagement. Okay, well, what else are you doing? Because that profit-sharing program alone, I do not believe will create sustainable engagement. It's got to be done in conjunction with other practices that create an entire employment experience.
So when you had those lists next to each one, a financial bonus system is just another one on the list.
Yeah, it's a tool, it's a lever. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll wrap up by saying that in the data that we looked at, we saw that 84% of Canadians are disengaged. And when I saw that statistic, and I was concerned, at the same time, I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic because I look at that statistic and I say, here is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for us to improve, and this is a potential area where we can invest in our businesses, because if we do that, we know that we'll see greater business success, and certainly there's a spillover effect of that to our economies and our communities. So with that, I thank you for joining us this morning, and we've got a little bit of time left if there's any more questions out there.
And I asked Liza to bring information about her program, The Confident Coach, because we are expected more and more to be skilled coaches in the workplace, and I wanted her to just explain what this program was about.
Thanks, Nick. The Spark HR is offering a program on November 13th and 14th called The Confident Coach, and what this program will focus on is applying coaching skills as you manage your employees. So it is a program that is designed for business owners, managers, supervisors, really anyone who has individuals reporting to them, anyone who is responsible for somebody else's work. How do you use your coaching skills to help people be successful? And that's what we'll focus on over those 2 days. So the development of coaching skills is certainly a theme and an important skill for managers to have, and we're really excited about offering this program in November. So thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Liza. And I mentioned right at the beginning that Liza's more than happy to deal with any one-on-one questions you might have, and down at the bottom there is her phone number. We will be sharing the copy of these slides and a recording of the slides to you all next week. So if you haven't been able to write down all these points or this important phone number for Liza, then you will get it at that point. And so I'd like to just conclude this webinar by saying, first of all, this was very, very helpful, Liza. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And it's so important. I thought the message you kept coming back to is so important, that you don't just do one thing. You do multiple things, and some of them are long-term, and some can be short-term. But in the end, you want to be sort of aiming for that model that you showed us, the buffet table, we'll call it. And I think that's really valid, because like anything else in business, it's not one thing that brings you success. It's a combination of many things. And let's face it, the teams that we have working in our companies are critical to the success of the company. It's just not going to happen if those teams aren't engaged and effective and aligned with our goals. So you covered all of those points, Liza. So thank you very much. And as I said, you will all get a copy of these slides.
Nick, it was a pleasure to be here today, and again, I thank you for the invitation to join you this morning.
Oh, it's our pleasure. And so you can see here on our wrap-up slide, go to our website and sign up for our newsletter, because that's a regular communication about business affairs, about business issues, and it's very much a how-to dealing with issues. So you can sign up on our website. And then I should say before we leave that our next free webinar is October the 8th. And in that webinar, you're going to learn how to conquer the 7 barriers to business growth. We have found over our many years of being in business and working with business owners, there are 7 common barriers that seem to hinder growth. And certainly the team actually is one of those 7 barriers, because you do have to have a good team that's engaged. And you can register for that webinar on our website as well. And finally, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please be in touch with me. There's my phone number, 416-429-2415, extension 101. Or you can, of course, email me, nick@yourplanningpartners.com.